On August the 6th, George Robins disappeared from this isolated country cottage. He's not been seen since, nor has his body been found. During the first day of the trial of Harold Barnes, who's been charged with his murder, the court heard evidence from Robins' business partner, Philip Kirby, of threats issued by Barnes on the life of Robins, whom he suspected of having an affair with his wife. The court also heard from Mrs. Gwen Farr, who described how she had been near the cottage on that night, and had heard shots fired, and a man resembling Barnes, and in a car of the same make as that owned by the accused, drive up to and afterwards hurriedly leave the cottage. Counsel for the defence, James Elliot, cast doubt on the evidence of this supposed eyewitness, Mrs. Farr, when he questioned her account of being in the nearby woods alone. He suggested that she could not swear to the details of her observation, since she was otherwise occupied with a companion. Mrs. Farr, whose husband is abroad, left the witness box in a state of distress. The trial is now in its second day, and Detective Inspector Robert of Fulchester CID is being called by Jonathan Fry, QC, leading for the prosecution.
Detective Inspector Robert, please.
I swear by Almighty God the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Detective Inspector Robert, Fulchester CID.
Inspector Robert, would you tell the court of your involvement in this case?
On August the 7th last, at 3 a.m, I received a telephone call from the local police station of Scorpion District.
Local to Treefell Cottage?
Yes, sir. Acting on a call they received concerning an alleged shooting at the cottage, they investigated, found evidence of a struggle, then contacted me.
Mr. Fry, is the hearsay evidence we've just heard put in evidence under the provisions of the Criminal Investigation Act 1967?
That is correct, my lord.
Thank you.
The cottage comes within your division, Inspector?
Yes, sir. Accordingly, I went immediately to the cottage, which I discovered to be owned by George Robins, a resident of Fulchester.
And what did you find? My lord, much of this is also dealt with under the 1967 Act.
A car, which was later found to be owned by Robins. Also a series of bloodstains on the floor near the main entrance. The blood was later found to belong to the same group as George Robins. In addition, there were indications that someone had recently been inhabiting the cottage. The fire was still warm in the grate, and there was the remains of a meal recently cooked in the kitchen.
But the place was empty?
Yes.
Well, did you then go on to make a more thorough examination?
Yeah, we found one set of fingerprints only throughout.
And were you able to identify them?
Yes, these were later compared with the set of prints taken from Robins' house in Fulchester, and they tallied.
And what did you do then, Inspector?
I took charge of the investigation to trace Mr. Robins.
Were they successful?
No, sir. Exhaustive inquiries failed to locate Robins alive or dead.
Would you now describe the circumstances leading up to your arrest of the defendant, please?
Yes, sir. During my search for Robins, I interviewed his business associate, Philip Kirby.
Yes, Mr. Kirby has already given evidence concerning threats made by Barnes on the life of the missing person. Did he tell you about these threats?
Yes, sir. I then interviewed the defendant and asked him several questions relating to Robins' disappearance.
And what were these questions, Inspector?
I asked him if he'd been in the vicinity of Treefell Cottage.
What did he say to that?
Well, he replied that he had never heard of the place. I told him where it was situated, and he said that he had never ever been to that part of the country.
Did you subsequently have reason to doubt the defendant's word?
Yes, sir.
How did this arise? Oh, my lord, there is no dispute about this piece of evidence.
Investigations turned up a parking fine which Barnes had incurred in the town of Silverton, which is about 2 miles from Treefell Cottage.
Had the fine been paid, Inspector?
Yes, June the 13th of this year.
And do you have copies of that?
Yes, sir, they exhibit one on the table.
Mm-hmm. What other questions did you ask the defendant?
I inquired if he possessed or ever had possessed a firearm.
And what did he reply?
He replied that he'd never owned one.
And did you subsequently have reason to doubt the defendant's word on this reply?
Yes, sir. The defendant had now incurred suspicion, so I received a warrant to search his house.
And what did you find?
A packet of .38 cartridges, sir.
Exhibit 2, my lord. Inspector, is that the packet of cartridges?
Yes, sir.
And did you ask the defendant why he was in possession of these cartridges?
I did, sir. He said he'd owned them for years, that someone had left them there and he'd forgotten all about them.
Did you find anything else?
We found fibres attached to a pair of his shoes, which were later matched by forensics to fibres found on a rug on the floor in Robins' country cottage.
I will, of course, be calling the forensic expert attached to the Fulchester CID, my lord, to verify this. And what did you do then, Inspector?
I cautioned the accused and told him I was arresting him for the murder of George Robins.
And what did he reply?
He replied, You can't do anyone for murder without a body.
And then what happened?
Well, he was taken to Fulchester Police Station, cautioned and formally charged.
Did he say anything further?
No, sir.
Inspector Robert, did you at any time invite Harold Barnes to account for his whereabouts on the 6th and 7th of August this year?
Yes, sir.
When?
Well, these were the first words I asked him when I first went to see him, sir.
Before you arrested him?
Yes, sir.
And what did he say?
He said, I am not going to tell you.
Thank you, sir.
You thoroughly examined the inside of the cottage, Inspector?
Yes, sir.
Did you examine the outside as well, the surrounds, the track?
Yes, sir, at first light.
Tell the court what was found.
Well, owing to the heavy rains, which began at 3 a.m. and were continuing while the investigation was proceeding, no tyre marks, except those of a farm tractor, were discovered on the track leading to Treefell Cottage. Similarly, no footprints were found either.
Did you subsequently examine the car belonging to the defendant?
Yes, sir.
Did you find anything which connected it with this alleged shooting incident?
Well, the car wasn't examined till a fortnight later,
No,
sir.
did you find anything?
No, sir.
If we're to believe the sequence of events claimed by the prosecution, Barnes drove his own car to the cottage, he shot Robbins, and then he transported the body elsewhere to a hiding place so far undiscovered.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm. Well, has the upholstery of Mr. Barnes' car been recently either changed or scrubbed?
Not changed, no, sir.
Or scrubbed?
I don't know, sir.
All right, Inspector. How old is the car?
8 years.
What condition is the upholstery in?
Well, it's worn.
Is it stained from natural wear and usage?
Yes, sir.
Thus, Inspector, it has not recently been cleaned, would you say?
No, sir.
Or the boot?
No, sir.
Thank you, Inspector. Now, when you asked the defendant if he had ever been in the vicinity of the cottage and he said never, did he not actually reply, I've never heard of Treefell Cottage? Not that he had never been in that particular part of the country before.
He did not.
Did you tell him it was near Silverton?
I told him where it was situated on the map.
Would you answer my question, please?
I don't believe I mentioned Treefell Cottage.
No?
Mainly because it was at a later date that I turned up the parking offence in that place.
What did he say when you confronted him with this parking fine?
He said something like, oh, that, I've forgotten all about that. He then went on to say that he did a lot of road travelling and he couldn't be expected to remember every place he passed through.
That's a very fair answer, wouldn't you say?
That is a matter of opinion, sir.
The date of payment of the fine is June the 13th.
Yes, sir.
This is no proof that Barnes was in the area at the material time. It was neither just before nor just after August the 6th.
No, sir, but it contradicted his initial statement.
When you cautioned him, you say he replied, you can't do anyone for murder without a body.
Yes, sir.
He said a lot more than that, didn't he?
I only noted the relevant remarks, sir.
Irrelevant for your purposes, Inspector.
No, sir.
Did Barnes not also say, how do you know he's dead? I don't believe he's dead at all. He's just dropped out of sight because the heavy mob are after him.
I've no record of that, sir.
And it was only when you persisted with your intention to charge him with murder that he said, out of sheer desperation, you can't do that without first proving that Robbins is dead.
The defendant was in an angry and aggressive mood. He never stopped yelling and shouting. It would have been impossible to have got done everything he said.
Inspector, did he not say to you that the frighteners have been put on Robbins for reasons connected with his business?
I have no record of that, sir.
So it appears. Well, did you pursue any other avenues of inquiry?
Such as what, sir?
Did you investigate other people who have been known to threaten Robbins?
We interviewed several persons, yes.
And?
These were people in the used car business, but they all had substantiated alibis and so were eliminated from police inquiries.
They could have employed others to do their work for them.
We brought our charges based on a series of incriminating circumstances connected with the defendant, Harold Barnes.
Which do not appear to be so incriminating on closer examination.
The defendant was asked to account for his activities between August the 6th and 7th, and he declined to do so.
Inspector, the defendant has a full explanation, which the court will hear in due course.
His failure to do so to the police greatly increased the likelihood that he would be charged.
Final question, Inspector. Did you make any promise to Mrs. Farr to the effect that it would not be necessary for her to reveal all of her activities on the night of August the 6th, providing she would give evidence at this trial?
No, sir.
No further questions.
Just one matter, Inspector. You replied to Defence Counsel's inquiry about other avenues of investigation.
Yes, sir.
Well, Who supplied the names of these other possible suspects?
The defendant, sir.
Only the defendant?
Yes, sir.
Oh. And how did he give you this information?
He volunteered it.
Well, did you follow these suggestions that he volunteered?
Well, he suggested that there might be people in the used car business who had stronger reasons for getting rid of Robbins than he had, and there had been trouble in that respect in the past.
Can you say from your inquiries if there was evidence that Robbins' life was in any danger from business rivals?
Well, not recently, no, sir.
When were you last asked to intervene in such a situation?
Well, it was April of last year, sir. I detailed a constable to maintain surveillance outside Robbins' business and home addresses because there had been trouble in the past.
And was there any trouble?
None, sir.
And none since? In the 16 months between then and Robbins' disappearance?
None that came to our attention, sir.
That is, until Barnes suggested it. Thank you, Inspector. I call Dr. John Gold.
Dr. John Gold, please.
A final question, Dr. Gold. Did you apply a laboratory test to some .38 cartridges and to a pair of shoes which the police had found in the defendant's possession?
Yes.
And did these shoes contain fibre fragments which match those from a carpet found in Robbins' cottage?
Yes.
Thank you, Doctor.
Tell us about the carpet, Doctor.
It was 3 feet by 2, rubber-backed, coarse nylon bristles.
Sorry. Was it made for any specific purpose?
It was placed by the main entrance. On the inside, I would think visitors would wipe their feet on it.
It's safe to say it's a doormat?
Not the outdoor kind.
No, but it was used thus by visitors.
Yes.
Where can one buy such a mat?
Any ironmongers, I would have thought.
Are they mass-produced?
I would think so.
Is there any unique quality about the mat found in Robbins' country cottage which sets it apart from all others?
I didn't examine all the others.
Doctor, you can see my question looming up, can't you?
The fragments taken from the defendant's shoes matched the fibres found in the carpet in the cottage.
And 1,000,000 other mats made by that same carpet firm.
I repeat.
Yes, I know. You didn't examine all the others.
I can give the court only the results of my own examinations.
All right, Doctor, let's try it this way. The fibres you took from the shoes, did they contain any marks, mud, even blood, which would nail them more firmly as having come from Robbins' mat and not from any other?
No.
No. You say that you have specialized in the study of explosives and firearms.
That is correct.
Mm-hmm. Did you examine those cartridges, exhibit number 2, my lord? You examined those cartridges?
Yes, they're the same, the .38 caliber.
Could you tell how old they are, Doctor?
Well, not precisely.
Well, roughly.
Well, the colour and texture of the cases give some indication.
Roughly how old are they, Doctor?
Well, it's hard to say, but, well, 5, 6 years.
How many does the box hold?
20.
How many cartridges are there now?
20.
Thank you, Doctor. An unused box of 6-year-old cartridges. I wanted the jury to hear just how substantial this evidence is against the defendant. The police seem to feel that because Barnes is found in possession of a box of 6-year-old unused bullets, this is enough to prove him a liar when he says he's never owned a firearm. Thank you. No more questions.
Thank you, Doctor.
That, my lord, is the case for the prosecution.
Very well. Are we ready, Mr. Elliot?
I apologise, my lord. I call the defendant Harold Barnes.
What is your religion?
Civic.
Take the testament in your right hand and read aloud the words on the card.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence I shall give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
You're Harold Barnes?
Yes.
72 Arbroath Crescent, Fulchester. Mr. Barnes, did you murder George Robbins?
No.
Where were you between the morning of August the 6th this year and the evening of the following day, August the 7th?
Mr. Elliot, no alibi notice has been served in this case. The Act provides that you cannot give evidence of alibi if a proper notice has not been given, so that the police may inquire into it.
If I may assist, my lord, my friend did warn me of this during the adjournment, and I agreed not to object if the evidence went no further than he claimed it would.
Very well. You may answer the question, Barnes.
I was in Scotland.
What were you doing there?
Delivering a car.
Why didn't you tell this to the police?
The car was stolen.
Who stole it?
I did.
Who was with you?
My wife.
Who did you see in Scotland?
I'm not prepared to say.
Who took delivery of the car?
Forget it, I'm not saying.
Your defence will depend largely on your own evidence.
My wife was with me. She'll bear me out.
You would be well advised to say whom you saw in Scotland. The jury may not be satisfied with yours and your wife's evidence.
Tough.
I advise you to reconsider your decision.
Look, I did not kill Robbins. And if there's any justice in this world, they'll find that out.
Is it true that you threatened his life?
Yes.
Did you mean it?
At the time, yes.
And later?
I wasn't going to go to prison for that rotten bastard. Yes.
You can give your evidence, Barnes, without using that sort of language. It won't assist you, and I won't tolerate it.
I wasn't going to rot in prison for that festering pig!
Mr. Elliot, does your client understand plain English?
Mr. Barnes, if you do not wish to rot in prison, I suggest you pay more attention to your replies.
You mean you want me to go down on my knees and bawl like an old woman and you'll get me off, right?
No, sir.
He means that you should be aware that you are in the most serious situation.
You're also convinced that Robbins is dead.
You're not then, Barnes? You think he's still alive?
Oh, he's alive, all right. He's in Brazil or somewhere at this minute, reading the papers and laughing himself sick about this trial.
Why do you think he's still alive?
Look, everyone jumps on me as though I'm the only one who wants Robbins out of the way. There were dozens.
We've already heard how the police checked the other people and found that they had proof of being elsewhere on August the 6th.
Playing cards with each other's mates. Some proof, eh?
What makes you think he is still alive?
Well, he owed them.
Robbins owed who what, Mr. Barnes?
Look, the police know all about this. Though you wouldn't think so from their evidence, but they do.
All about what?
He was in on a racket. He was creaming off the top to pay for his girlfriends, and the mob went after him.
Mr. Barnes, what racket?
The cars he stole were hot.
You mean they were stolen?
Most of them, yeah.
Can you substantiate that?
God almighty, I ought to be able to. I used to knock them off for him, didn't I?
Please explain that to the court.
I'm a car thief. I steal cars to order. If a bloke says he wants a... Or if he says he's got, say, a punter for... Well, 1969 Mercedes. Well, I look out for one. I knock it off. He does a respray, changes the serial numbers, the number plates, then he sells it to the customer.
And you worked in that capacity for George Robbins?
Yeah.
How long ago was this?
Oh, a couple of years back.
Robbins was the head of this racket, was he?
No, he was small time. There was a boss.
And you believe that Robbins faked his death to avoid trouble from his employers because of some irregularity in the accounts or something like that?
He was scared out of his skull.
Was he? When was this?
Best part of last year, when he knew they were after him.
Or could these unknown employers have killed him?
Well, they'd never get their money back if they did.
It was, say, as a lesson to others.
But why hide the body? Look, Robbins is alive and well and stands to collect a packet out of his insurance. That's the name of the game, mate. That's the only way he can pay off the mob.
Mr. Barnes, why did you threaten him?
Because he was sniffing around my wife.
You thought they were having an affair?
I thought so, yeah.
You went to him to protest?
I make no secret of this. I told him if he didn't lay off, I'd do him.
You would kill him?
Yeah.
You went to his office on July the 17th and you saw him again on July the 30th at the El Condor Club.
Yeah.
You were no longer working for him at that time, were you?
No, not for a year or more.
Now, what happened on the first occasion?
Well, the first time, a couple of his guerrillas, they come on by the arms, you know, while he worked me over. Then they threw me out.
By guerrillas, you mean strong men, something like that?
Yeah, guerrillas, yeah.
Did anyone see you as you were thrown out?
Well, the place was full with punters.
With customers?
Yeah.
Did you complain to the police?
What's the point? Where's the witnesses? You lot live in ivory towers.
Not all the time, Barnes. We sometimes come down out of them to see that people like you get a fair trial.
Nobody saw nothing. Listen, I could have been hung, drawn and quartered, and nobody would have seen a thing, you know what I mean?
Would you tell the court what happened at the El Condor Club?
Well, Robbins and his mate, Kirby, they had a couple of brasses with them.
Lord, one of these ladies was Mr. Kirby's wife.
That's right. She's been on the game since she was 10.
Now listen to me, Barnes. If you persist in uttering gratuitous and defamatory remarks, I shall have no alternative but to adjourn the court until you agree to behave yourself.
Mr. Barnes, please confine yourself to giving relevant information and use simple language that everyone can understand.
OK.
Now, Mr. Elliot, I was not complaining that I did not understand what he was saying.
Of course, my lord. Mr. Barnes, you say at the El Condor Club you were provoked into saying to Robbins, make the most of it because you won't live long to collect, meaning money that Robbins had been awarded in a court case.
Yeah.
Were you provoked?
Yeah.
By what?
Well, Robbins and Kirby, they kept shouting things across like, where's your old woman tonight? Having an off with the milkman issue, you know, things like that. Then they'd fall about laughing and then they'd shout something else, you know.
Was the club crowded?
It was full.
So many people heard this jeering.
Yeah, that was the general idea.
Did anyone come to your aid?
Like hell.
What did they do?
Well, they joined in.
So you had no friends there?
Robbins was... well, he had all his mates there. He was buying all the drinks that night, you know.
And finally, you were thrown out.
Yeah.
Mr. Barnes, did you believe at that time that your wife was having an affair with Robbins?
I wasn't sure.
Do you know the truth about the matter now?
I know now that she wasn't.
On August the 6th, did you know that there was no truth to these rumours?
Yes.
Mr. Barnes, why did you take your wife on a trip to Scotland, which you now admit to be one made for a criminal purpose?
Well, we'd made it up that week, you know, about Robbins, so I thought we could have a weekend on our own together.
You mixed business with pleasure.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Robbins disappears.
I know how it all looks, you know.
How what all looks?
Well, I know that people heard me say that I was going to kill Robbins, and then they found all that blood and stuff at the cottage.
Yes, and an eyewitness.
Oh, yeah, she was a Roman, wasn't she, eh? Police must be pretty desperate. If all that they can find is a tart who's having it off on the side while their old man's away at sea...
Mr. Barnes, would you please watch your tongue?
What are you talking about? You proved that yourself, didn't you?
You would be well advised to listen to your counsel.
Listen, what kind of a circus is this? I'm just trying to spell out what he said to support my case. Now, listen, she was lying on her back on the grass.
Be quiet.
And now the jury ought to know that and not have to work it out for themselves with nods and bloody winks.
Be quiet! I will decide what the jury ought to be told, not you. In the meantime, you will cease making distasteful and, I repeat, defamatory remarks. Mr. Elliot, I shall not speak to the defendant again.
I understand. Mr. Barnes, answer the following questions, yes or no. Have you ever owned a gun?
No.
On August the 6th this year, did you have any reason to wish to kill George Robbins?
No.
And do you maintain that George Robbins is still alive?
Yeah.
I'd like to call George Robbins.
The case of Regina versus Barnes will resume tomorrow in the Crown Court.